Well, welcome back, everybody, to Countdown to Resident Evil. Sorry, Countdown to Biohazard. We're finished. We have all the games that are on PS4 that are least relevant. Completed 0, 1, 2, sorry, 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, Revelations 2, 7 demo. About 15, 16 videos or so in the series. And this video here today, I'm just playing some raid mode for Revelations 2, which is a very fun mode. I suggest you guys, if you have Revelations 2, definitely play it. Um, but we're going to talk about today is all opinion based pretty much, but where Resident Evil's kind of started, where has it gone, points where it really changed, where it's at now, and kind of what I feel about it with some opinions I have for it. So So, obviously the first one is to start off with is Resident Evil 6. Sorry, Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 1 came out in 96. Uh, Classic games. Classic for a good reason because it's the iconic characters that weren't iconic at first were introduced. Chris, Jill, Barry, which is right here is his original outfit, and Wesker, which is kind of the series staple antagonist, so, or behind the scenes antagonist at least, and just a lot of the survival horror elements that were pretty much made what survival horror is. There were games like Alone in the Dark Out, which are very light-hearted and colorful games. A little creepy. There's some other games too that kind of were survival horror-ish. Resident Evil, if you didn't know, is based off of a game on a Nintendo or the Famicom because it didn't come out in the United States, called Sweet Home. You can watch the movie. Actually, it's on YouTube. It's actually a game based off the movie. But it had a lot of elements that Resident Evil used, which have a couple characters, end up in a mansion. They're stuck in there. They have to use their resources and use their skills to progress through this mansion. Kind of like that. If you didn't know, Resident Evil actually started off in development as a first-person shooter. So, and first-person shooting is not the first, or FPS's first-person perspective is definitely not new in the series. So people who think 7 is like, oh, it's a new thing, it's not a new thing. It's been in Resident Evil for a while. It's just that it's the first time in a long time it's been like this, and it's also the way it's done. It's very unique. But then the developers were inspired by Alone in the Dark and its success, so they went to the third-person perspective. And Resident Evil 1 was great. It was a phenomenal game. First game, obviously, I grew up playing that, and it was scared out of my mind. Fixed camera angles was great. You couldn't see a zombie on screen or a creature on screen, but you hear its growl. Very scary. Dogs were popping through windows. Didn't expect it. You really, the inventory space was a very unique thing too, especially with Chris, because he was harder. Didn't have as many weapons as Jill, and he also had very limited item space, so you had to constantly go back to your save room to put items away and put items you felt like you needed. Also had a cool music score to it. You go inside the inventory room and it's like you're surrounded by all these dead monsters and creatures, and you go into inventory space room, the save room, and it was safe because it had that music playing, that very gentle music, like, oh my gosh, I made it to this part. And of course, it was back before autosaves came out, and unlike other games that were out during the time and for the genre of PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 even, you couldn't just go to a save place and save. You had to use an ink ribbon, so you couldn't just save willy-nilly. So that was very cool. Very unique experience. The voice acting is very cheesy. It's actually in Guinness Book of Records being one of the worst voice acting in video games. But despite that, the voice acting, it was a phenomenal game, and they kept it up too. With the success. But just that setting, the mansion setting was just so great. And then from there, they went to Resident Evil 2. But before Resident Evil 2 even, there was a 1.5, which is basically 2 without Claire. Oh, 2 without... I forget her name is Elena? I'm not forgetting Elena. It's a biker chick, but she ended up becoming Claire. But it's pretty much Resident Evil. 1.5 is Resident Evil 2. Minus the fact that Resident Evil 1.5 actually in development was they would have sacrificed graphic power to make sure to fit more monsters on the screens. Like they wanted multiple zombies on the screen at one time. Just the system wouldn't allow it. In Resident Evil 2, you notice that there's only maybe 6 zombies on a map at maximum, and if anything around that or even higher, you notice the frame rate go down. So they didn't want that happening. Resident Evil 2 was great. Loved it. Even if because they expanded, that wasn't just in the police station. Even though you spend most of your time in the police station, it was just so great. It had the same features of Resident Evil 1. Had 2 main characters, limited item space. Creepy monsters popping out through windows. It even had the whole idea that Resident Evil 1's you leave the main area and you come back and you use items you found in the new area to help you get further into the old area. Very awesome feature. Limited item space. Definitely a little more actiony, but it's a really great. Especially next to Resident Evil 1 remake, it is Resident Evil 2. The one for PlayStation is my favorite. 3 to me was great. A little more actiony, but I love Jill. I loved it mainly because of Jill and Nemesis. The whole idea that this tyrant is stalking you, hunting you down the whole time, and you just have to either run away from it the whole time or choose to fight it and waste ammo. Your choice. And storyline wise, Resident Evil 3 is not really necessary, I don't think, because you do see the destruction of Raccoon City, which is they refer to Raccoon City every single game, because Resident Evil 3 takes place kind of almost the same time as Resident Evil 2, maybe a little bit after, but still going on around the same time. And then we go to pretty much the in between from Resident Evil 3 to Resident Evil 4. There's a lot of games that kind of came out during that time. One of their first-person shooters came out. It's more like a rail shooter. Resident Evil Survivor, not a good game. Even though it has connections to Resident Evil 2, not a good game. I played it. I used to have it. I still have it actually. Code Veronica. That's probably the biggest one. I would call that the true sequel to Resident Evil 2. Not Resident Evil 3, but Code Veronica, or even Code Veronica X, which came out for the PS2. Great game. Claire and Chris, brother and sister going, helping out, still had the survival horror element, still had the whole idea of returning to old areas with new items and limited item space, and it still had the general layout, what Resident Evil felt like and looked like. Great game. I think after that there was just 2 other games, I want to say. Well, sorry, 3 other games, but before 4, basically, chronologically speaking. There's Gaiden, which is a Game Boy Color game, which I didn't play too much. I played it one time. Remember it being pretty bad. And then Survivor 2, which is the sequel to Survivor. Then one thing I got really excited about was the Resident Evil 1 remake. Yeah, the Resident Evil 1 remake was just phenomenal. Loved every minute of it. It was a really good rendition of Resident Evil 1. You know, made the expansion scarier, made it still had the same elements of Resident Evil, but just made the controls better, had better visuals. It was really true survival horror. And even with the addition of the new storyline with the Trevor family, just it made it still awesome. Um, Loved it the whole time. I swear to God, such a good game. And then right afterwards, it came out Resident Evil Zero, which was actually another great game. I thought Zero was great, even though the Billy character, which they should expand upon, and they kind of threw him into the storyline like a little weird. But I think nonetheless, it was a good game. It had all the elements of survival horror, and it had some new elements. The whole that future games used, like the tag team kind of idea. The whole idea of you having two teammates, and you know, there was no inventory boxes. You can just drop your items on the floor, which is something we've been wanting in a Resident Evil since Resident Evil 1. So, another thing I liked was about Resident Evil Zero was the switching mechanic. So like you can switch weapons between characters. No, so it was just phenomenal. And I liked also, you both had like limited item spaces. You so nearly had 12 item spaces between the two characters, and the big weapons took up like 2 item spaces. Really cool. So, um, and I think Resident Evil actually pretty much like leading up to Resident Evil 4 had a lot of great games. Like even the ones like Dead Aim, which was like it's kind of a cheesy game, but it used the gun peripheral on PlayStation 2. If you remember that, it was pretty awesome. Not a good storyline, but it played pretty awesome. And then the Outbreak games. Outbreak games are phenomenal. They're the first like online Resident Evil games where you can play with people online on PS2, and it kind of coincided with the same the same first 2 games, Resident Evil 2 or the second 2 games, uh, Resident Evil 2 and 3, and also has some pretty awesome characters. And I heard that possibly that there's a character mentioned that was from Outbreak that's in the Reporter, that's in possibly mentioned in 7. And this brings us to the big mamma jamma, which is to me one of the last times, honestly, Resident Evil was phenomenal. It was a great, awesome game, and it was survival horror, and I wouldn't even call it one survival horror. I think this is the first game that kind of like changed the genre completely, and that's Resident Evil 4. Now I love Resident Evil 4. I love the Leon character and his development as a character. I like the setting. I like the whole this at least especially the beginning. Being stuck in that village, being run down by crazy kind of possessed, controlled, infected creatures. They weren't zombies anymore. They weren't slow walking. But they were still unique in a sense. It still felt like Resident Evil. Still, because the constant sense of running and not deciding not to conserve your ammo and things like that. But definitely felt more actiony. It changed the perspective from the the third person's perspective, kind of like the standard with the fixed camera angles and things like that, and it changed it to like this over the shoulder third person shooter, which I it adds to me where the bus killer. I loved Resident Evil 4, but it didn't. It took away what a lot of things that made Resident Evil great. I love it's a good third person shooter. Like you play it by itself, it's a great third person shooter. Same thing with Resident Evil 5 and 6. Those are great third person shooters, but uh, they just didn't. I think they didn't um, you know compete with what the other Resident Evils and what made them great, and it didn't have that Resident Evil feel. I honestly and the and the voice acting, but the characters are so terrible. I like Leon, I liked Ada. Ashley was the terrible character. The main bad guys, Salazar and Sadler. If you guys play it's so annoying. The very cliche bad guys is so terrible. It like that's not Resident Evil, man. It's not Resident Evil. Wesker was the bad guy in Resident Evil 1. You didn't even know who the bad guy was in Resident Evil 1, right? Until the end, right? Because the whole time you're fighting these zombies and these monsters, and you're like, okay, we're trying to survive, trying to get out of here. We finally make it to this lab, and all of a sudden we find out that Wesker, who's been gone the whole time, he's the guy behind all this stuff, or at least behind luring the stars into the mansion. Like, oh my gosh, like Resident Evil 2 is like you didn't really you're in a situation and you don't know what's going on. You're at a police station. You don't know who the bad guy is. You just fight. You think it's just the monsters, and you find out it's another monster. It's this guy named William Birkin, and he's this monster you've been fighting, this tyrant the whole time. And so amazing. And Nemesis, he's the bad guy. He's been hunting you down the whole time, but it was just done so perfectly. But like Resident Evil 4 is like up front, shows you the bad guy is, and he's just like the worst bad guy ever because he's like you'll never. He's like he's just so cliche. He's like he says stuff like was like I'm surprised you made it this far. Like it's so dumb, And then Resident Evil 5, they took Wesker, who was a cool character, and just made him just so cliche and terrible. He's like, oh, he's just talking about destroying the world and all that stupid stuff, being a god. Like, oh my god, Wesker, they screwed him up. Wesker was so much better when he was just behind the scenes kind of thing. So speaking of Resident Evil 5, so again, Resident Evil 4 kind of changed the genre completely, made it to an action game. They say action horror, but it's like action with a little tiny bit of horror. If it was like 50-50, I would call it action horror, but it's definitely not horror. It's like more like 25% and like 75% action shooter. So 5's still carried on the same thing, but now Chris is too buff, and it's more actiony. They're doing somersaults and flips and huge punches, and they're fighting more not infected, which of course are not zombies anymore. They haven't been zombies for a while, and storyline's just terrible. With the addition of Wesker, just so bad. Ugh. 6 is just another icing on the cake. Oh shit. Just it globalized Resident Evil. At least Resident Evil 5 took place in like a portion of Africa. Resident Evil 4 took like in a portion of like Spain, and Castellano, wherever the hell it was at. A part of Spain. Resident Evil 6 was like, boom, it's all across the world now. We're going to China. We're going to a little small town and another town, and we're going underwater. We're going everywhere. We're flying in carrier jets, and we're doing all this stupid stuff. They globalized. They made it too huge. They had a total of 7 character or almost 8 characters you can play as in the main game. So that's ridiculous. Like what happened is playing as 1 character or 2 characters. Now you're playing as 7 characters. What the hell's going on? Like Resident Evil, you've gone too big. You weren't making, and that's why Resident Evil 6 bombed. I think because fans starting to realize that wow, Resident Evil's gone way too far out of its its zone. It's good zone. It's comfort zone. So, um, just so bad. And of course, there's a bunch of Resident Evil games in between. A lot of those Revelations games are actually okay, even though they're still third-person shooters. They're still kind of more focused on. They still had a little more horror elements to them. I would say both of them, Revelations 1 and 2. The Mercenaries game was just dumb. That was for 3DS. It was just a mini game basically based off the Mercenaries mini game. No one cares about Operation Raccoon City or Umbrella Corps. They're just terrible games. Um, and then now they're on 7. But before we talk about 7, I wanted to say one thing right now is that I love Resident Evil. Great, phenomenal series. Um, but it's what it was known for and what it created, the atmosphere it created, that was pretty much there alive from 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica, uh, was just gone, left out the window in 4. And everyone loves 4. Like everyone loved it. It was great. I liked it too, but I didn't like it as a Resident Evil game. Um, but just threw out the window, and like instead of they kept on going forward and making it bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they lost what made Resident Evil special. And the only thing they did, honestly, that to me that still kept people, Resident Evil fans, from buying the games and playing the games, was just to throw the characters in as like a nostalgia thing. Oh, great! Resident Evil 4 has got Leon. He's back. You guys love Leon from 2, right? It's like, yeah, and then he's not killing zombies anymore. And then, oh, Resident Evil 5. Guess what? Guess who we got back? Chris Redfield. You guys loved him from Code Veronica and 1. Like, oh yeah, I guess we did. But like now he's just huge and he's punching boulders. And guess what, guys? And then they went they went full retard for 6. And guess what, guys? All those guys that you loved in the old series, we're gonna bring them all back. I mean, now, to an extent. Right? We got Leon. We got Sherry Birkin, who everyone forgot about, hopefully, but they brought her back. But they forgot about her. We forgot about her because we wanted to forget about her. You got Sherry Birkin. You got the son of Albert Wesker because he's dead in 5. We couldn't have Wesker in this game, so we brought his son in. I feel bad for Troy Baker doing the voice acting for that because he's a great voice actor. He shouldn't have never done that role. Then we got Chris Redfield, who is just fueled with rage, and he's a douche. And yeah, guys, it's cool. And got Ada Wong. Everyone loves Ada Wong. She's mysterious and she's always putting off Leon, and definitely give him the heart. Being hard to get. So no, this is so terrible. Um, but now that brings me to Resident Evil 7. So Resident Evil 7, we have the demo out, and it's an idea of how the game's gonna play. At least with the controls, and some of the general settings. It definitely feels like, from watching the trailers, that's gonna be more horror related. Still gonna have those guns and weapons and stuff that you had in Resident Evil 1, 2, 3. So horror games, survival horror games, but you got weapons to fight yourself out, which is different from other survival horror games. Because now, when we think of survival horror games, we think about games like Outlast and Amnesia, and even Soma, and some other games that all these indie people are making. Is that we think of survival horror as like no combat and just running from enemies and hiding. And that's like the new staple of survival horror, but really survival horror is not about not able to fight, but it's more like just is defending yourself and able to make it out alive against extreme odds. Resident Evil 1 did that, and this is what I feel like Resident Evil 7 is going back to. With a lot of different features I've heard there's going to be in it. There's going to be upgradable weapons. There's going to be, currency you can use to buy stuff. And so kind of still not being horror. It's still kind of diverting a little bit from horror, but I think the core of it's going to be still survival horror, which I'm excited about. And but one thing I heard, and this is what ticks me off about Resident Evil 4 and on too, that Resident Evil 7 is going to be chapter based, and I'm like, this is bad. And why they decided to make these games chapter based? I'm like, why can't they be this one continuous game with some save points in between? Because there are gonna be save points in Resident Evil 7, but Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, Revelations 2, they're all chapter based, you know. And they did the same thing in Final Fantasy 15. Like, why are you guys doing the chapter based thing for? Is it because people have low attention span? I don't know. What is it? What is it? You know, why can't you do something like Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica? You know, it's a continuous game, has save points in between with loading cutscenes and things like that. It was one continuous game, not this chapter-based thing. So, like, if I wanted to go, Resident Evil 4 or 5, actually 5 you can't. Resident Evil 4 you could to an extent. You know, if I wanted to go back to an area before, that was in a previous chapter, I could. Some areas in Resident Evil 4. Uh, but 5 you couldn't. 6 you couldn't go back to areas you've been to before. There's none of that going back thing. Resident Evil 7 is supposed to have that going back thing though, but still like you're in another chapter. Why can't you just make the whole game one continuous game for it? I think fans will love it to have one continuous game. Um, so, and also Resident Evil 7 is not gonna. I mean, it seems like there's not gonna be any zombies in it, like actual slow walking zombies, and I would love that. I would love to see like the old zombies come back, but they're probably not gonna do that. They have these molded men and the Baker family, which be unique in its own thing, but I feel like they're bringing a lot of good features back, but I guess they're making compromises. They're not bringing all the good features back. I think they're just doing limited ones because they're trying to appease all the new age people because they want to sell this game, right? I think that this game would sell if they just redid it. Or if they brought back all the old features. Another good saving grace for Resident Evil, if this one doesn't do good, is that apparently Resident Evil 2 remake is happening. So if they remake 2 like they remade 1, I would love that. So. But like, it's good that I'm talking about this now is because, I'm playing through all these Resident Evil games as you watched, how it progressed as a game, and so I'm super excited for Resident Evil. I am super excited for Resident Evil 7, definitely. And if you guys are super excited for it too, let me know. It's they put a lot of time and effort into it, definitely, and they're working on the game for a while too. So, just just the old school Resident Evil guy. Just you get used to what made it great, and and see you kind of go downhill. But anyways, that's all I'm gonna talk about. So we're done with this series of the countdown of Biohazard. The next videos are gonna be, or for Resident Evil, is gonna be Resident Evil 7. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys watched the whole series, thank you for watching the whole series. If you guys are watching this video and listening in, definitely thank you for watching, and feel free to comment and throw some ideas in here. What do you feel? What I said, by the way, is not set in stone. Obviously, it's my opinion, so it's not like, oh, this one guy thinks he knows everything about Resident Evil. Like, no, I don't know. I just what I feel about Resident Evil. So, so subscribe to look forward towards Resident Evil 7 videos that I'm going to post, and also to look at the other videos I have from our Resident Evil series. I have a lot of them. I have almost 80 now, so, or maybe 80. I have exactly 80. So, we'll see you guys around. Okay, thanks.